Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about a dog named Julie rescuing a 6-year-old girl in Turkey. We also talk about the Uttarakhand government passing a new law to stop the scams in government recruitments. But first, we talk about the judiciary. Last week, the former Supreme Court Judge S. Abdul Nazir was appointed the governor of Andhra Pradesh. And this happened within weeks of his retirement. It was yet another example of a judge getting a post-retirement job shortly after his tenure came to an end. Now, many believe that this practice compromises the independence of the judiciary because it is jobs like these that end up influencing judges when they are presiding over important cases where the government is involved.
The judiciary is the neutral arbiter of our fundamental rights, the guardian of our constitution.
That's Apurva Vishwanath, and she writes on law for the Indian Express. We'll be talking to her about this issue.
So a post-retirement job, especially at the behest of the government, casts a doubt on how neutral or how unbiased a particular judge has been in his tenure. So working for the government after retirement brings up a question of whether there was a quid pro quo, whether a judge's decision was influenced because he was expecting a post-retirement job, and all of these questions come up. That's essentially what the problem is with a post-retirement job offered by the government for a constitutional court's judge.
And Apurva, in the case of Nazir, how long after he retired did he get this job?
So Justice Nazir retired on 4th of January. So it's not even been a couple of months since he retired. Of course, he had a considerably long stint in the Supreme Court. He became a judge sometime in 2017. And many judges nowadays do take a position on this and say that they will not accept a post-retirement job offered by the government. Justice Nazir, incidentally, did not give any interviews, did not speak after his retirement, like a lot of judges do these days, right? So there was always this question about, is he holding his breath because there is a post-retirement gig coming through?
Right, and how has the opposition reacted to this development of Nazir becoming the governor of Andhra Pradesh?
So the opposition, of course, criticized the appointment. Congress leader Abhishek Singhvi said that as a matter of principle, we must oppose, post-retirement jobs, and that it's a great threat to the independence of the judiciary. CPM leader and Rajya Sabha member A. Rahim also questioned the appointment, and he said that it's not in consonance with the constitutional values of the country. So, there have been growing voices in the opposition criticizing the appointment of Justice Nazir, and especially because he headed, benches that heard sensitive cases that had great political significance, like the Ayodhya Ram Janmabhoomi dispute, like the Triple Talaq hearing. So all of these have prompted responses from the opposition.
And Apurva, this is obviously not the first time that we are seeing such a case. So could you talk about the kind of things we have heard about post-retirement jobs in the past?
Yeah. In fact, Abhishek Singhvi, while criticizing Justice Nazir's appointment, recalled a speech that former Union Minister Arun Jaitley had made in 2013. He had in the parliament said that the desire of a post-retirement job influences pre-retirement judges.
I think this whole temptation of continuing to occupy a Lithian's bungalow is a very serious temptation. And therefore, kindly review that unless it's absolutely essential, either some of these tribunals must be subsumed into the judicial setup, pay the judges who have retired and retired judges a pension equal to their last drawn pay. Because the danger is greater, the desire of a post-retirement job influences pre-retirement judgments. It's a threat to the independence of judiciary. And once it influences pre-retirement judgments, it adversely impacts on the functioning of our judiciary itself.
So like Jaitley mentions here, there are two kinds of post-retirement jobs offered by the government. Statutorily, there are some appointments which require, judge of the Supreme Court or a judge of the High Court to be appointed. For example, Justice Ashok Bhushan was appointed the chairperson of the NCLAT. So this requires a former judge of the Supreme Court to be appointed to this place. And similarly, for the National Green Tribunal and a lot of these quasi-judicial bodies, you need retired judge of the Supreme Court. So that is one aspect of it. There are other kinds of post-retirement jobs which are more political in nature. Say, for example, Justice Nazir's appointment as a governor. This is not the first time that a judge of the Supreme Court has been appointed a governor. Justice Satyashivam was in fact appointed a governor earlier. Or former Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, right? He was nominated to the Rajya Sabha by the President of India. So you can argue whether it's by the government or if it's a nomination by the president, but it is essentially a political appointment.
And Apurva, are there any studies that actually show a concrete connection between getting a post-retirement job and judges ruling in the favor of the government because of it?
Right. So anecdotally, of course, there are several judges who get post-retirement jobs, and you sort of tell which judgments which went in which way, but these are all anecdotal inferences. Perhaps for the first time in 2020, there was a study by Madhavane where they draw a positive conclusion where they say that certain judgments which are favorable to the government in the run-up to retirement does increase your chances of getting post-retirement jobs by the government. So you have a modeling done here, taking various factors into consideration, from whether the government has sufficient tenure left in their term to actually give a judge a post-retirement gig, and subjectively how the judgment was whether in favor or against the government. And a lot of these factors are taken into account, and the study draws a causal link to giving pro-government judgments and getting post-retirement jobs by the government.
And what factors does the study say determine these incentives and the post-retirement jobs offered by the government?
So, for this study, there were a number of pandering incentives, as they call, that were considered, by the authors. One is about whether the case is important. That means how important is this case to the government? So this would be political consequences for the government or electoral consequences for the government, and whether a judge retires with enough time. The study accounts for at least 47 weeks left in a government's term to be rewarded with a prestigious job after retirement. So, and of course, there are certain factors that sort of come in play here, because in the Supreme Court, cases are randomly assigned to benches. There is a roster that is made. So the study also takes into account whether a case was particularly assigned to a judge and whether the judge wrote the judgment. And all of these put together, the treatment of these benches and how they decide the cases, taking that into account, the study concludes that there's been a causal link between giving judgments that are pro-government to getting jobs from the government after retirement.
And according to this paper, are judges being influenced for financial gains that they get through these jobs?
So the study doesn't talk about financial gains as such, but what it points to is corruption in judicial decision making. And that raises questions on the independence of the institution itself. What the study finds is a causal link between playing along, creating, a passage by pandering to the government before retirement to be able to get a post-retirement job. So that raises crucial questions on how independent our judiciary is. The institution is, after all, made up by individual judges.
And Apurva, over the years, are there things that legal experts have suggested to avoid this from taking place?
So every retirement function in the Supreme Court or a High Court, you hear the refrain of, we're too young to retire. The age of retirement for a judge of a High Court is 62. For a judge of a district court is 60, and for the judge of a Supreme Court is 65. Only 34 judges are in the Supreme Court. A bulk of our judges of constitutional courts are in our high courts, about 1,000 odd judges, and they retire at 62. So, in fact, our former Attorney General for India, K.K. Venugopal, has been a big champion of increasing the age of retirement for judges. What we also notice is retiring from the court is rarely really retiring for many of our judges. They take up commercial arbitrations. If you have retired as a judge of a high court, then you're eligible to practice before the Supreme Court. So they are continuously working even after retirement. So why not keep them longer on the job and, ensure that they don't have to go looking for a post-retirement job, as we say. Of course, other changes that have happened over the years is increase in pay. And these are all factors because ultimately the salary of a judge is in no way a match to what he or she could earn by being in the profession otherwise, right? So that's something that has been a topic of discussion. And together all of this, but ultimately it is also an individual judge's decision in how it plays out. Many judges have taken a stand and said, even if it is a requirement under a statute to appoint, a retired judge, they will not accept a position from the government. In fact, Justice Deepak Gupta, when he retired in 2020, in an interview to the Indian Express, said he would not accept a post-retirement job such as the Rajya Sabha nomination that was given to Gogoi, and also half-jokingly said not that anybody would offer to him. That small comment shows that some judges know why they would not be offered the job, or some judges would know why a job is being offered to them.
Also, some have suggested that there should be a cooling off period before a judge takes a post-retirement job. Do we know whether that is supposed to help?
So that's something that experts are talking about now. People in the bar are talking about. As of now, there is no cooling off period, right? So a judge can take up a job immediately after retirement. But it is a proprietary issue and judges recognize this. Even when they take up commercial assignments, if it's a case that you've decided, if you've been a party to it, all of these factors must be taken into account. There are no laws that frame this issue, but there is an understanding that judges will not take up such assignments.
And next we talk about the miraculous rescue of a 6-year-old girl in Turkey, which is still reeling from the massive earthquakes that hit the country last week. In total, over 40,000 people have died in both Turkey and Syria, and the death toll is still rising. For days, rescue teams have been working round the clock to save as many lives as possible. And in order to speed up the process, India decided to offer help as well. When we spoke to Indian Express's Deeptiman Tiwari, he told us more about it.
Following the earthquake on February 6, India extended a helping hand in the form of rescue contingent from the Indian Army and the National Disaster Response Force, which is the specialized force for disaster rescue efforts in India. And 3 teams from the National Disaster Response Force were sent to Turkey.
Yesterday, India sent a plane, a carrier to Turkey, C-17 type, carrying more than 50 search and rescue members, experts, including some search and rescue dogs and some equipments. This plane arrived early in the morning in Adana, and the Indian team has started their rescue operations already in Turkey.
So these teams actually landed on February 7th and have been at work since then. And as it happens in any rescue operation, the initial first few hours is called the golden period because that's when you can save maximum number of lives. So these forces are actually trained to go there and just get on with the job. They carry their own equipment. In fact, this time they even carried their own vehicles because it was understood that, vehicles could be difficult to get there. So initially they basically go and look for sites where life can be found, and they start looking through the debris using their equipment, and they try to fish out whoever is alive first because that is the priority.
Now, Deeptiman says that initially when the rescue team began digging, all they found were dead bodies, which was quite disappointing for them.
While giving an honorable burial to the dead is important, the task of a rescue force is first to actually save lives. So for the first 3 days, the team actually did not sleep because they keep working through the day, through the night, because it's the most important time when you can save more lives.
So the team continued searching. At the time, they had been in Gaziantep, one of the worst affected regions in Turkey. They were going through rubble and the collapsed buildings, seeing if they could find anyone who was trapped. And for this, they were using something called a victim locating equipment.
It's basically a long probe where you cut a hole in the concrete and you insert the probe. The probe has a camera. So you can, through a small hole, like how a laparoscopy surgery is done in the human body, where you don't cut open the body. Through a small hole, you insert a camera. So that is used. However, that was not very successful in the beginning when they were trying to. So they brought their dog. They have carried 4 dogs with them, sniffer dogs.
One of these dogs was Julie, a 6-year-old female Labrador, who, like the other NDRF dogs, was specially trained in finding signs of life in such a situation. And when Julie went near a particular rubble, she started barking.
So when she started barking, so it became clear that there may be somebody alive inside. So obviously the entire team got to work and brought their equipment, started cutting through the concrete.
And this took a while because Deeptiman says that cutting through that concrete takes time and is a complicated process.
Depending upon how tall the building was and how deep the person may be trapped. And, in such a situation, while rescue, if you commit a single mistake, you might end up killing a victim who has survived for, say, 3 days or 4 days of quake. So after about a couple of hours of, digging and cutting through concrete, they found the dead body of a 75-year-old woman. Once they found this 75-year-old woman, they realized that this must be a family. So the other members may be nearby, around. So they started digging further and going further, to the sides, and they found dead body of a couple, a man and a woman. The woman's body they found was curled over something.
And that's when someone from the NDRF team, while removing the body, saw a 6-year-old girl who was motionless and her eyes were shut. When they found her, it had been 80 hours since the first earthquake.
So his initial reaction was of probably disappointment that, but when he looked closely, he saw that her eyes under the eyelids were moving. And he immediately shouted that we have a child alive here. So the entire rescue team rushed and local medics came and she was pulled out of there and she was airlifted to the nearby hospital where she is said to be now recovering.
Now again, this rescuing of a 6-year-old girl was possible because of the dog Julie, who incidentally is also 6 years old. Deeptiman says that the force has actually carried out 2 other expeditions like this in the past as well.
And its first one was in 2015 in Nepal, when that was also a very devastating earthquake. I had myself covered that earthquake in Kathmandu and elsewhere in Nepal. There also NDRF had and the Indian Army had done excellent work. In fact, on the ground, India had maximum personnel engaged in rescue operations, and great stories of hope, resilience of people came out of there.
And NDRF says that despite all their fancy and specialized equipment, dogs like Julie still remain the best friends when it comes to rescuing. Now, as far as Turkey is concerned, Deeptiman says that the place where the NDRF is right now is situated on the foothills of a mountain. And during this time of the year, the temperature can go to as low as -5 degrees Celsius, accompanied by strong, icy cold winds.
But thankfully, because it's a specialized force, it is aware that it may have to work in such conditions, so it carries special clothing, special sleeping bags, and everything. Still, it's been very, very cold, and many of the NDRF personnel there have fallen sick. In fact, one of the dogs is also currently sick because of the cold, because it's very cold.
But despite the many challenges that the NDRF rescue team is facing right now, Deeptiman says that when he spoke to some officers, they told him how great they were feeling in being able to reunite families with their loved ones.
In fact, he was saying that forget the living. Even when we were fishing out dead bodies, their family members would come and kiss our hand. And their people call Indians Hindustani for some reason. And he was saying that I didn't know that, there was so much of respect and affection for Indians in Turkey. And he was saying that the patience of the people, the discipline with which they sat around the sites without getting agitated despite having lost their loved ones was really inspiring and, motivated them to work harder, to bring some hope into their lives. He also said that the fact that India as a country had decided to extend such a gesture to another country, so it was incumbent upon them to give everything to the rescue operation because the honor of the country was at stake. And it was something that would build goodwill for the country. So if the country had trusted them with such a big responsibility, they could not fail in that duty.
And next we talk about Uttarakhand. Protests have been taking place in the state over the scams and irregularities in government recruitment exams. And now, in response to these protests and to stop such scams from taking place, the BJP-led state government has taken a step that could result in those found guilty paying a fine of up to 10 crore rupees and serving life imprisonment. To talk about this more, Indian Express's Avnish Mishra joins us. Avnish, could you begin by talking about the kind of irregularities we have seen in the government recruitment processes in Uttarakhand?
Yeah, for the last few days, there have been continuous allegations, and because of that, agitations against multiple paper leaks in Uttarakhand, mainly since 2016. For example, there were irregularities in 2016 Village Panchayat Development Officer exam. The recent one was Uttarakhand Public Service Commission exam, and it was cancelled in January after there were allegations of paper leak and the question papers sold to different candidates. The most important in this list was case pertaining to a written exam conducted by the UK SSSC on December 4 and 5 in 2021. And there were around 1.6 lakh candidates who appeared and 916 were selected for different departments within the government. After the results were announced, several student organizations accused that the question papers were sold to the examinees before the test. There were a lot of protests regarding that. And as I told you, the latest allegation of scam and cheating in January, it kind of triggered this. So students, mainly under the banner of Uttarakhand Berozgar Sangh, they were protesting with a demand that all these inquiries should be shifted to the CBI and all the upcoming exams should be cancelled until this inquiry is not complete.
Right, and these protests also turned violent, where stones were hurled and the police also resorted to lathi charge. But talk about what the government has now done in response.
After the protest, the government tried to establish contact with the protesters. They tried to invite them and have a meeting with the officials. So after that, a 5-member delegation of the Berozgar Sangh, they met with the government official, the additional chief secretary of the government. And they were kind of assured that the government is making sure these things are not repeated. And they also informed that the High Court has already denied the request of a CBI inquiry, saying that the investigation so far has been unbiased. And so that is why there is no need to transfer it to the CBI. And the government assured to bring this law, which is now we have received in form an ordinance.
Right, and it was last Friday that the Uttarakhand governor gave his assent to this ordinance. So tell us, how is this law supposed to prevent the use of unfair means in these examinations?
The main aim behind the law is to prevent offences related to obstructing the sanctity of examinations, the use of unfair means, the leakage of question papers and other irregularities. So basically what they're trying to do is to make the punishment much stricter for those people or organizations who are involved in such scams and a mass level cheating. So under this, if an examinee is caught cheating or causing another examinee to cheat in a competitive exams, there is a provision of imprisonment for 3 years and a minimum fine of rupees 5 lakh. If a second time offender will be punished with a minimum jail term of 10 years and a fine of rupees 10 lakh. Similarly, if a person or a printing press or a service provider or a management conducting further examinations, they are involved in a more planned way, in a nexus kind of way, then there is a provision of punishment not less than 10 years, which may extend to life imprisonment, and a fine of rupees ranging from 1 crore to rupees 10 crore. So this is the provisions. Other than this, if an applicant is found cheating, the person could be debarred for 5 years, and upon conviction, this could be extended to 10 years. The properties earned by using unfair means will be seized by the government. And so, this is basically what they're trying to do, to make the law stricter so that people fear and do not get involved in such things.
And Avnish, back when Uttarakhand was part of Uttar Pradesh, then also there was a law that was put in place to stop school children from cheating. What kind of impact did that have on students?
In late 1980s and early 1990s, the state of Uttar Pradesh, from which Uttarakhand was carved out in 2000, it was frequently witnessing allegations of cheating, and in some cases, even the officials and teachers and even local gangsters were involved. I mean, there was a whole nexus of this cheating mafia going on in Uttar Pradesh, and that is why in 91, then Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Kalyan Singh and Education Minister Rajnath Singh, they brought a law in 1992 to promulgate a stringent anti-cheating act. The law kind of aimed to end the practice of mass copying in schools and university exams. And there was a provision that any student found copying will be handcuffed and sent to jail. And the offense was also made non-bailable cognizable offense.
Also, despite the fact that this law aimed at stopping school children of classes 10 and 12 from cheating, it was still non-bailable.
Exactly. Even then it was not bailable, and that is why a controversy was created, as in 1992, newspapers in the state published pictures of handcuffed students caught cheating in the exams. And because of that, there was a sudden drop in the percentage of students who were passing these examinations. So that time, the Samajwadi Party government led by Mulayam Singh Yadav, they made this a big election issue. And when they came back to power in 1993, they scrapped the anti-copying ordinance within hours of taking oath, and also implemented a self-center rule which allowed schools and colleges to become examination centers for their own students. I was talking to a lot of teachers who were teachers back then also, and they told me that there was an increase in the cases of cheating and unfair means. I mean, just like there was a drop the year before in the passing percentage, after this was scrapped, there was a sudden increase in the passing percentage of students, because I mean there was a lot of cheating happening and they were kind of using unfair means to pass in the examinations. So this was, again, there was this controversy. A lot of people were opposing to the self-center rule. And because of that, in 1997, when the BJP government came back to power, Chief Minister Kalyan Singh reintroduced the anti-copying law, with the only difference that this time the offense was made bailable.
You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Abhishek Kumar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, with help from Rahil Philippos, who had spoken to Deeptiman for the second segment. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.